All right, there we go. What's going on, everybody? We are live and here today with the second part of the Dynamic Parkour Trace System devlog. And we're going to be taking a look at the kind of the final version of what the ground actions are going to look like. Now, for those of you who've watched the first version, the one I did, I think it was about 3 weeks ago, you're going to see a lot of similarities. Let me really get this infinite window out of the way here. You're going to see a lot of similarities between what's going to be shown today and what was shown then, but there's a lot of new things I've added, tweaking, extra modification ways to be able to, select actions, as well as some new actions as well. So I don't want you to think that I'm just kind of repeating the same stuff, but some of it might look familiar. So I just want to, give that note right out the gate here. And for those of you who are watching, I just want to know that I am also on the chat here. I'm just on it on my phone. So, if you guys do start chatting along, just feel free to send a message. And I might be a little bit delayed, but I promise I will be monitoring as best as I can. Sorry, I was just trying to make sure the chat was up on my phone and active. Okay, so as you can see here, we've got just kind of like a basic open world map, and I've put some basic mesh items in here. One of the main reasons why is because I know a lot of people, when you're watching this system and watching the showcases and things like that, using cubes, using simple primitive meshes doesn't showcase exactly what it can do. And I can totally see that, and I wanted to take some mesh assets that I had just from random packs, and I put a few things together just to kind of showcase how the system is going to work, and how things are going to behave. So here real quickly, we'll go ahead and we'll kind of run around the map. So you can see we've got this nice little kind of standard vault. We got some nice smoothing on the wall vaults here. You can see where he's planted, stays in place very nicely. We also have the standard tic-tac actions and wall vaults. I think I was just a little close that time. Let me just back up. There we go. So as you can see here, I've widened out the tic-tac trace search a little bit, and this is just to kind of mess around with something else. But you can see we've got the nice drop actions as well. So, all the things that we've had before are still in place, where we have the sliding actions and all of that good stuff, mantle actions. Now, there's a few things that have been added as well, and this is where things get a little bit more interesting. Now, in the previous version of the system, you would have, your vaults, mantles, things like that. But as you can see here, we've got these kind of enclosure areas here, where we've got a slide area, we got this little mantle enclosed area, and we also have this vault enclosed area. Now, all of these together are going to bring back different things. Oh, I see something on the chat here. Hey, what's up, Dewey? How's it going, buddy? Good to see you, my man. Sorry about the delay on the chat. But anyways, so let me just back up a little bit here. I got the rotation turned down, so things look a little. So we got this now where you can see where it's defining higher up enclosure points, and we're using a different animation. If I go up to here, you can see he does a nice little roll mantle instead. Now this also, we can see we vault, and then I can slide. Now this is also due to a new selection system with the over-under action preference, which again, something that, I'm going to be showing you guys kind of how that works. But right now I'm just kind of showing you how things work as far as like the actual action use and stuff goes. But anyways, and another one of the new actions here is also the ability to traverse narrow passages, which I just need to back up a little bit. Here we go. And this is just because of the distance value I set it to. But you can see now we can pass through little passages like this. So it's no longer just if the object is like fully blocking the character's area. The system is now also able to detect narrow passages as well and put a landing spot on the outside. So all of this is motion warped as well. So none of this is just, it's just happening. It's just carrying from the animation. It's all happening through motion warping. So, and I'm trying to ensure that there's as much motion warping in areas as needed as absolutely humanly possible. So, hey, thanks, Wolf. No, I mean, it's the lack of props wasn't really an issue. It was just, I didn't really know what I wanted to use. So just as a quick background for those of you who might not know, before getting into Unreal Engine, I spent about 10 years in Blender. working with more as a hobbyist than anything. But I've done texturing, animation, rigging, modeling. The only thing I didn't really dabble in was character design. And that's one of the biggest areas where I lack. But yeah, no, I just didn't have time to model out the like custom meshes and stuff, which I am going to be doing eventually for them for one of these showcases and stuff. So I do have plans for that. But yeah, now just getting back to things here. Now, the other thing that I have added in is kind of the ability to add your own values in. So now that we've done the run around the map, you know, you kind of see what's going on for the most part. And there's a few more other things, bear in mind. That's not the end of the actions, just to clarify. Oh, got some more chat here. Hold on. Yep. Yeah. So the goal with this is I'm trying to do more than just parkour. There's going to be sort of, I guess you would call them action influenced, or I'm sorry, action adventure influenced type actions as well. So there's going to be like narrow ledge walking, narrow spaces, full dimension calculations, all that good stuff. See, there's going to be a lot more. Like this is going to be more symbolic to, I feel, after, you know, all the development time and stuff. It's going to be more symbolic to something like what Epic would produce. The only difference is that I just wanted to make it myself. I didn't want to wait for them. Although I will say their motion matching project is coming along very nicely. Okay, so just to take a look here, I do have some print strings going on here. So let me take these out just to clean things up. So this is going to be the ground action selection. Now, as you can see here, it's based off of just a simple input value, and this is a a BPI call. So it's just a standard interface event, like how the actions did in the previous system. And this is a custom-made function that I've actually devised, and it is a full, not only just defining ranges, but also selecting the value closest to. So let's take a look at the montage selection here. So everything is data table driven now. And I know I'm probably moving around a little fast. Don't worry, this is just the quick coverall, and then we're going to go through it piece by piece. But so everything here is just kind of like, you just kind of plug these values in. This you only need to use if you're actually going to use all three. But now the ground actions are split up into, I guess you could call them categories, between vaulting, mantling, drop, and free action, which free action is essentially there's nothing in front of you, nowhere, you know, but you can do something like, you know, a little front flippy action. Now, through other parts of the system, you'll also be able to create like follow-up actions and all that type of cool stuff. But yeah, so we got free actions, drop actions, mantle, and vault. Now, the reason why these are split up is because certain locations are going to change based off of if it's a vault action or mantle action, a drop action. Not to mention how the system outputs the height. So like if you're going up an object, it's going to be the height from where you start to the object's top point. However, if you're doing a drop action, it should be the point from the floor, like the last known floor position, down to the landing location. So these are where these dynamic height values, length values, and all this kind of stuff gets starting to put into play, but it needs to have some sort of a selector. So the way that I found to be able to give this to you guys with the most freedom was essentially I had to make my own, I guess you could call it smart chooser system. And again, it's data table driven. So here we have the ground action montage selection stuff. Now, here we have the actual values here. Oh, hold on. it's so the goal with the system, their nerve is essentially to try and make it so that way there's no more need for parkour development. With all the new tools out there, you know, AI, creating meshes, creating music, creating things like that. And granted, some of the AI stuff I don't agree with, but that's not a road I'm looking to go down. I'm just more stating that with all the different tools out there, I'm trying to create my own set of tools as well. Things that'll make it so that way base systems, like just being able to vault, mantle, climb, doing these types of games aren't as daunting. You know, give the freedom back into the creative process rather than just like the standard logic process. And that's kind of the toolkits that I try to make. But anyways, all right. So like I said, here we have the ground actions listing here. And essentially the way this splits up, you can see we have index 0, index 1, index 2, and index 3. Now, the way this works is that you can see here we have vault 0, mantle 1, drop 2, free action 3. Now, this is just because this way you can, you know, set which row in the data table you want to use and then define the categories. Now, don't feel like, if for those of you who might not have a good familiarity with coding or blueprinting and stuff like that, don't worry. It's just kind of like a number matching value. So like whatever you want mantle to be, set that to that number. Vault, set that to that number. This is just using the standard numerical value, but you know, you don't have to have vault as 0. There's nothing that indicates that vault is 0 in the system. This is just your own matching system. So I just want to make sure that that's clear as well. So, and as you can see here, we have what looks like 9 different parkour actions and or vaulting actions. And each one of these has its own set of values here. So we do have also, I've put in a action name because throughout development and after putting in a bunch of animations, I realized, crap, I don't know which one of these are what anymore. So this is just your own optional naming convention where you can just type in whatever makes sense to you for what the action's supposed to be. Now from there, we have height, length, and distance values with a min-max. Now, excuse me. This is a range value. So, right, so 90 is the minimum, 180 is the maximum. Anything in between, this can be performed. The one thing to keep in mind is that you can have more than one value with overlapping values. So let's say instead of 90 and 180, and the next one maybe starting at 180, you could set that one to 150. Now, the reason why this is kind of important is because of the fact that when you're setting up your animations, in most situations, you need to make sure that the previous value and the starting value for the next one, you know, they're kind of within a line of each other. This, you don't have to. You can set overlapping values, and it's not only going to find the ones that are all within that value, but it's also going to find the best matching value. So the one that's closest to whatever the value the system defines as the height or the length or the distance from the starting position. All of these things are, it's not just going to select the range, it's also going to select the best matching value. So you can set these up to be as big or as, you know, however you want them to be, and setting up different values for different animations, and the selector will kind of do all the work for you in the background. Now, as you can see, we also have a few other things here, such as custom input values and modifiers. And these are, again, some of the new things that I've added into the system because I wanted to give you guys more control, you know, and it's great that the system works on top of whatever might already exist. But another thing I really wanted to add was a way for you guys to put your own values in, things that you might have into your projects, into your systems that you want to influence how action selection is performed. So when you go into the animation selection here, if you just click the little plus symbol here for the custom input values, you'll see that we have a value range min-max and then a value index. So anything that's labeled index is basically your standard integer index type system. And for those of you who don't know, it's basically meaning that 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and these numbers are assigned to something. Very basic, very simple. It's not like it's like you got to read binary to understand it type of thing. But you can set your own custom values inside of this, and you can add as many as you want. And as far as how you define these values, now, just like if you guys have used the old, the version 3 or sorry, version 2 of the system, you know that there's the blueprint interface that you have to add to be able to get access to all of the kind of primary events. Well, the blueprint interface now is also going to include, you can see set transition action values and set custom action values. So if we go into here, you can see that I have 2 different functions or 2 different values plugged into this array. So it's just a simple make array. And when you first get the function, it's just going to look like this. It's just going to be blank. And then you just pull off, do a make array, and put whatever float values you want in there. Now, the thing that I think is pretty cool is that almost anything can be converted into a float value, even a Boolean. Boolean comes back as 0 or 1. You can do multiplication values with a sign with -1 or +1. You can see I've got velocity for a speed calculation. I've got a rotation calculation on the yaw to see how we're facing by comparison to our actual movement. So there's different things that you can set up. And what it's going to do is, again, 0, that's this one. 1, that's this one. And if I had something in 2, that would be whatever was off of this one. And you can make as many of these as you want. You know, it's not restricted by any means to just whatever I've set in. You can add as many of these as you want. And again, because we've got the index here, if we look back at the action here, we can now see, okay, if we want to use the speed, we're going to use value index of 0. If we want to use that rotation check, then we're going to use value index of 1. And then what do we want that value range to be? So do we want it to be, you know, if it's a speed, do we want it to be if he's walking or running? If it's a rotation check, do we want it to be like if he's 90 degrees or 45 degrees? So there's a lot of different ways that you can use these values. And again, you can put these as many as different and whatever you want. So that's one of the new things that we've added, or I've added into the action selection. The other thing is I've changed up the modifier section as well. I'm just going to go ahead and delete that out. So the other thing is we have the modifier section here, which you can see is now selected as an array. The way that this works now is if you don't want to have an action with any modifiers, like you don't want to be like if it's enclosed, if it's, you know, speed values, you don't want to have anything that's going to influence. You just want to be like, all right, if the custom values or whatever I've put in, if the height, the length, the distance, if all of that matches, go ahead, forward. We're not going to worry about anything else. However, for modifiers, we do want to actually take a look here. If you wanted to add some in, for example, like if sprinting, so there's a built-in sprint boolean, just like in the original version of the system. Maybe just look here somewhere over the rainbow here. There we go. So you can see we've got the Dynamic Parkour Trace System sprint boolean. So all that is again just a standard sprint boolean that you can use. System will look and see if it's true or false at the time of triggering. So that's something that'll just happen, you know, during the time that you're kind of going through and doing things. Now, the other thing that I think is pretty cool though, is if we're looking at the modifier types here, you can see we got the sprint boolean, we got the sidewalls. You also have, these are the enclosure types. And this is how certain things are being selected, like that, like the whole bar through window animation. So that's being done if it's enclosed full. So if it's, you know, full height blocked and width blocked, and if it's of a certain height, then it's going ahead and doing that action. However, if the height is lower, like between like -10 and +10, I think is what I have it set to right now, is when it does the slide. So it's all based off of the height calculation. There's going to be additional values and things thrown in later on because they are in there. I just haven't put the settings connection up yet. So, but yeah, so once we have this defined, we can also add a secondary modifier, which you can see here. Now, this is where things get really interesting. If we get the secondary modifier added in, you can see that we have 3 values here. And this is where we can set the Boolean match condition. So let's say if we want sprinting and, I don't know, sidewall L, then we'll go ahead and do this animation. But or we can do sprinting or sidewall. So these are just standard Boolean execution commands where you can define how things are going to be assessed and what conditions you want them to be assessed by. And this makes for some really interesting options, especially when you start looking into the different things that you can do with the action modifier. So the custom action mod here, this is something that I did show in the first version of the devlog a few weeks ago, which is essentially it's just an array value. So if we go into, here we go, for use variables, you can see action mod list here. So if we go ahead, we can add as many of these as we want, and these are just custom Boolean values. That's essentially all it is. And if we wanted to access any one of these, and let's say change the value, we can get the action mod list. So we can get the array value here. And then let's say we want to set a certain index value, right? So we're going to set array element, and then whatever the index is. So again, just like with all of the other things that are indexes, we want to make sure that we're matching those numbers. So whatever we set that to. So if we look at, you know, however many action mods we have, like if we want to use 3, then we're going to make sure that 3 is selected. And then if we want it to be true or false. And again, you can make as many of these as you want, just like with the custom values. And it allows you to be able to basically work your own system's stuff in even that much further. And something else just to note as well is that the system, when you put in the custom values, it will do the same range matching that it will do with the base values with the height, the length, and the distance. So whatever custom values you put in, it's not only going to find the ones that are within that range, but it's also going to find the best matching value that's the closest to the thing that was found by the system's trace functionality. So let's see. I appreciate that. Yeah, no, I mean, I'm trying to kind of grind everything up together because that's going to be, speaking of secondary animations there. I'm just going to put that out because I don't want to show the animation too much yet. But I do have a new transitional as well as follow-up animation selector. Now, just to kind of show real quick, you guys probably have seen, like, when I go over, drop down, he does a landing animation. However, let's say, for example, you were using a specific animation that you had a specific follow-up action that you wanted to use, and only if that animation was triggered. That's it. You know, you don't really care if X variant was triggered, only Y variant. Okay. Well, what we can do is in the new systems here that I've created for the animations, we can actually pretty much do exactly that. So this is an example, by the way, on the screen here of what a more modified animation might look like. You can see that we have a few different warp offsets here, and this is because this way I can, get the exact height point where he attaches to the ledge item, where he's going to push down and kind of get up to that height, and then he's going to go forward, just kind of pushing himself in place. So this one is being more used to kind of like hold him in place at that position, and then he goes around, and then he goes down to the landing section. We have 3 different read times here, one for the object height, one for just a standard read time, and then there's actually a new read time value that I've added in here. So if we go to the dynamic read time settings, we can now use height to land area to be able to define how the landing is going to be retimed. So this is actually going to change based off of how high up you are. It's going to stretch that landing section of the animation that much more. And what it's going to allow is that even on higher up things, it's the vault over type of look is going to feel very similar. And let's see if I think if I just push this up like that, I should still be within range. Let's see. Nope, that's still too high. I guess I could just adjust the values. There we go. So you can see that he does the nice drop to land, but if I go up on this side, it takes almost the exact same time to be able to get over and get dropped into the land, even though they're starting at different height values. Now, it doesn't take the exact same time, I guess that's a bad way of putting it, but it looks like it's doing it in a natural gravity type fashion. It doesn't feel like it's sped up or slowed down, I think is more of what my point was. Just bad explanations. So, and that's where things become really interesting with some of this retime stuff, is that you can use these values to really kind of stretch portions of an animation, even just based off of the in the moment situation at runtime. And that part's really cool. But this is where we go into, again, I was talking about the transitional side of things. And this is where we go into you can see capture transition value. And then on the end action notify here, we have transition options. So let's explore this a little bit here. So one thing with the capture transition values, okay, is that you can see we have the value index and the add value. So this is something like if you wanted to make it so that way, maybe it adds, for example, this one is using a landing transition section, which I'll show you guys how all that functions here in a second. But it's going to add 300 to the downwards velocity. So this way it selects a proper animation, because I found that when I was doing certain animations and the retiming, it kind of messed with the velocity a little bit that was being registered out. However, with a small add value, it added back in consistency. So what I did was I just go ahead and added something that allows you to be able to kind of, I guess, offset that retime section. It just makes it so that way things flow a little bit better. Now the other thing is on the end action notify, like I said, we have the transition options. Now we can attempt a normal transition, which is going to happen based off of a variety of selections, and I'll show you that here in a moment. And we also got the group index, which again is going to be part of what I'll show you here in a second. But the thing I wanted to really point out is that you don't have to use any of the dynamic stuff that I was about to show you. You can also assign a montage directly. So what this means is that, like I said, if you have a specific action, a specific montage, a specific thing you want to happen only when one thing is happening or another animation is happening, you can just go ahead and throw that into here and it'll choose this as the override. It'll also blend in using these settings, so it'll blend out from this animation and into the next one using this blend time value as well. So now, but as far as like if you wanted to use the more dynamic option, we can go ahead and just select the attempt transition like you see here, go to the transition group index, and this is where we're going to go to a different data table. So this is the transition action montage data table. So without getting too complicated about what essentially this is, think of this like a categorization of types based off of values. So to simplify, you can see here that we have grouping index value. Okay. Now what this is going to mean is that these actions are going to be assigned to this value, which if I go to my character here, again, just going to the interfaces section here, just like I showed you guys with the custom action values. If we go to the set transition action values, you can see that I'm just getting the character's movement velocity, getting the ABS value because it's a lot easier to match straight values than negative values, and then putting it into the make array and then output. So that's really all that's happening here, is that we're getting some kind of just values and then it's being saved at a point during the animation. So when you go through and you add this little notify here, it'll set whatever that value is to be. So in this case, it's value 0. So for me, value 0 is our velocity. And if I want to make sure that it does the animation I want it to do, then I'm also going to take that and add 300 to it. Now it's not doing this here. It's doing this at the point that it needs to. So don't worry about it doing things when it's not. It's only going to trigger things in the moment that it needs to do the thing. I've tried to be very, very precise about that. Now, once you do that, though, you can then go ahead and just select what you want the grouping to be. So this is where we've got the selection value here. So this is for 0. And then what that min-max value is going to be. So I've got 3 different animations here. This one is just a simple kind of additive landing type of thing. This one is a full root motion animation, and this one is a full root motion animation. This one's just doing kind of like a land, little scamper forward. Oh, don't mind, he's got the blend out. And then this one is doing the kind of roll into a running transition. So all of these, you can set, just like with the action values, you can set as many values and as many things as you want, and it'll just look for, okay, we're using action value 0 and group 0. So now we're going to look for all of the ranges for that and see which one best matches. If you create another value and want to match create a set of animations that are going to match against that value, all we need to do is just go add an element to the index here and then set the, grouping index value to 1 instead of 0. Because this will just, again, it's just kind of matching to the value that's being put in here. So this is essentially what more or less is defining the grouping, but this is just kind of continuation on. I will say I've tried, I don't even know, probably about 300-400 different variations to try and get something that was going to work. It was a little bit more streamlined, but this was kind of the best way because it allows for as many values as you guys can think of, and still calculates them all into itself appropriately. So there are going to be some kind of number matching when it comes to the index values on certain things, I will say. But, it's one of those things that I'm trying to take out as much extra stuff, but I'm putting in a lot of customization on the back end of things. So now with the transition stuff, though, you can also add as many of these as you want. You can also, the beauty about data tables is that, let's say you have a section of things that you want, but you want to modify how all of it works, but you want to keep the original version, duplicate. Now we got 2 rows with the exact same values, and then you can just adjust what you need to adjust. You can also, let's say, for example, you want to add a new row or add a new item, and it's going to use very similar information. You might just need to change a couple of things. You can just right click, copy of that index, create the new one, right? And then we can right click on the index 3 and paste. You can see now it put in the value range as well as the montage that was on the one that I copied. So there's some really interesting and really unique stuff that you can do with data tables, and I really love what they've been able to offer as far as selection and stuff goes. So everything's going to probably be data table driven as much as possible. It also takes a lot of this stuff out of the kind of component section side of things, because there's a lot of stuff in here that was given by Unreal Engine. Some of it's useful, a lot of it you're not really going to touch. So as a result, just easier to move everything over into its own kind of consolidated area. Now, the last thing here, let's see, there's something, just trying to make sure to keep on track here. Now also, just while I'm thinking, if you guys have any questions, anything that you want to ask, feel free to, ask right now, just because, again, I'm trying to retrace my thoughts. Also, hey, Brett. Sorry, man, I just saw that you joined on, man. It's been a long time. For those of you that don't know, Brett Gunnerboy Levy over there is working on one of the largest simulation projects I've ever seen anybody take on. He's doing in, honestly, I don't even know the direction he's in anymore. It's been a while since me and him have chatted, but yeah, feel free to do a plug if you'd like, dude. Your stuff is awesome. I love that, that stuff that you were working on before, and I'm sure it's only gotten better since. Anyways, let's, I guess we can just go ahead and just start moving on into the next part of things. So as I had said before, we have different action selection styles now. So we've got the ability to, whoops. Oh, that's right. I was messing with the ground actions. Modifiers, we're going to go ahead and just remove those out because those are now preventing us from doing the action because it's looking for specific things. All right, there we go. So now we can vault over or we can slide under. Now, how this works is essentially now this is going to be in a data table for the actual like settings and shit. But if we look into the character blueprint here, go to the Parkour Trace System component, you're going to see input settings over under action preference. Now, right now, by default, it's set to over. However, if I look at the event graph here and go to, here we go, left control, you can see when it's pressed, I'm setting it to under. When it's released, I'm setting it back to over. Now, this is a very, very simple Boolean enum operation with just two values. If you set it to over and you don't change it, it's going to stay over. And if it finds both over and under sections, it's going to always choose over. This was a fix to something that it was honestly an extreme annoyance to me, even in the current version of the system, where if you choose over or under, it's just defaulted to that. And changing that at runtime becomes problematic, especially if you're trying to do multiplayer. So I've created a basic enumeration selection value now where you can literally just change the over-under action variations. Now, this isn't sort of like an enumeration-based selection. This is like if there's two values or two actions that have been found, like, there's a vault area that's within defined height of the calculation systems, and there's a open area that's also existing. It's going to go, okay, we found an open area that's right around player floor height. We've also found another vault area. It's within available vault area. Which one of these should we prioritize? And that's essentially what the system is doing. It's prioritizing either that kind of that underside area, which also does work for drop actions. So if I go ahead and you can see, if I don't press the drop key, it does not actually do the drop. But if I press control, he will now do the drop. And I can even press shift and control to be able to do a different type of drop. So there's a lot of different ways that you can modify how these actions are controlled. And there's going to be even more stuff that is going to be added in because there's going to be pipe climbing and a whole bunch of different stuff. This is just kind of showing you guys the structure to expect. And one of the main reasons why I wanted to do this is because of the custom action stuff that you can now do with the modifiers, with the custom input values. I wanted you guys to be able to also get certain things ready for your games and systems as you're developing, because then you can maybe expose certain values you might need and have them ready by the time version 3 comes out. Oops, sorry, I'm just catching up on the chat, man. Yeah, so for 2D, it's going to work exactly the same thing. So when you're working with a 2D, it's the restriction is primarily to the camera and the actor's movement, which basically means that he's still going to be moving in a world direction. It's just only going to be on the x-axis. Because of the fact that it doesn't restrict rotation-based stuff, none of that's going to affect the system. It's using the actor rotation and orientation to the world position, And even in 2D games, you're still using a world position. You're just constraining it to the Y or the X. Let's see. Yeah, so it's going to be horizontal pipes, vertical pipes, transitions to them. As far as how those transitions are going to work, I haven't quite. It's more of like just figuring out how I want to do it. But yeah, there's going to be pipe climbing, ladders. There's also going to be sliding as well. So like if you're on a vertical pipe and you go down and let's say press some sort of shift key, then you're also going to go and do a slide down. Let's see. Yep. So, and also, yes, combos are going to be a huge thing. That's going to be the something else I'm going to be working on for the climbing system as well, is being able to do like ledge climbs to vault overs to drop rolls to tic tac actions to wall runs, and just being able to kind of literally just hodgepodge your way through with as many variations of action types and stuff. Because the thing I'm really trying to implement more so than anything is animation blending. Because there are times, especially if you're using multiple animation packs, and with a system this size, it's hard to find an animation pack that's going to have everything. So one thing I'm really trying to do is give a lot of animation blending principles to be able to allow for moving from animation A to animation B, regardless of what the start or end positions might be, and still be able to provide that seamless transition. And that's one of the main reasons why that even the reset transition values here, which is just making sure that anything being used for transitions like, landing position saves and things like that all get reset back to 0 whenever you're done with them. But even this has a blend out value. Everything is blendable, and when you use these, you're disabling, this should actually be disabled. You're going to be disabling the auto blend out. So you're just basically saying, nope, Epic, nope, we don't want your blend out feature. We're going to use this one instead. Why it is that this works out better, I honestly couldn't tell you. Technically speaking, the only difference between what this is reading out and what this is doing is this is 0.25, this is 0.2. However, it doesn't seem to want to cut off when you want it to, so this way you can actually define wherever this is. Same thing with the montages. Let me... Yeah, this one works. So if you got the on the end action notify, oops. We got the blend out time. So either one of these, the end action notify or the end transition or reset transition values. When you use the blend out here, it's at the point that it's triggering is also going to be where it stops the animation. The thing that's really allows for some cool stuff, I'm just going to let it reset, is that by the time it gets to the end, like right here, sometimes animations you might want to stop back here, have it use a different fall or a different transition. So this way you can have a blend out from whatever point that you define, and then you can also blend into the next transitional animation. So it's definitely really, really cool. And yeah, exactly. Trying to eliminate the need for multiple systems. Exactly. It's meant to be an all-in-one, so that's going to be kind of what I'm going to try and do. Now, what do you mean by integration into an existing project? Like if you already have version 2, or just like how it's going to work into like if you have some of these pieces already? Just so I make sure I'm understanding your question there, Wolf. I don't want to misunderstand. Realistically, integration into already existing projects shouldn't be a problem at all. That's one thing that I'm trying to really hammer home is the ability to not only integrate them into existing projects, but being able to add values from your projects. And this is where the, custom input values here comes into play. Because let's say, for example, you want to use weapon values, speed or whatever. You can add a lot of different things in. And again, float values they can be converted to anything. I've used an enumeration to select a float value of 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, basically selecting almost the byte value. Yeah, I mean, so if you want to, it shouldn't be any problem with adding the project in. So I would say that no matter what you're doing, if you're not using any version, if you've got a currently active project, you'll be able to put this in, because it's the same as the other version, where it's an actor component that you add on to the player character that you're using. And when you add it onto the player character, what's going to happen is that it's going to give you access to certain functions, certain Boolean values, and it's also going to execute traces. And again, these traces are based off of the actor's position and orientation. So when you have the actor constricted to the x-axis and the rotation is also constricted to only forward and backward directions, then you end up making it so that way that's the direction the actor is rotated, thus eliminating the 2D, 3D, first person, third person perspective issues. Is if you just use the standard actor rotation, as that's generally used and constricted based off of the world orientation direction, it gives you with a more consistent value. I think I'm overcomplicating the explanation, but yeah, everything will be able to be moved in. So, and the only time you would need to do a migration is if like you were using version 3 and needed to and then I pushed out an update. That's when you would do the migrate, because then you can keep all the settings. So like with this system, the only time you should migrate is if you have a like current version of the variant. So version 2, for example, is not going to be something you'd want to migrate version 3 over. You're actually going to eliminate version 2 completely. And I'm going to be putting out videos on how to be able to cleanly remove the system and push in the version 3 system, because there's so many changes. This is not going to be something you can just push it right on top of. But luckily, removing the system is actually very easy. So that's not going to be a huge issue at all. So, but yeah, no, I'm trying to be able to making sure that not only are you going to be able to put it in, but it's going to be very easy to do so. But anyways, so getting back to the notifies here. So like I was talking about though, with the blend outs, when you're doing these blend outs, you can then match up, one section to another. Like one thing that I did on, that's what I was trying to remember earlier. One of these animations I cut off slightly, I think it was a slide maybe. Yeah, okay. So when he goes to the slide, if I go, I'm just going to turn off the blend, because if I don't, it's just going to stop. You can see, why is it still blending? It's a small glitch that I've found inside of this. I'll just take the end action notify out for a second. So if we go to the end of the animation here, he gets on 2 feet and then goes into a full run position. But if I stop the animation right about here, it's going to transition into an idle animation or a running animation in any direction a lot easier, because of the feet position here. They're both planted. Now, also, I could do it from here if I had a landing animation where the right leg was up, and I could just kind of do like a plant forward a little bit. So this is where you can like time the end here. You don't have to have them on top of like with the other version of the system where you'd want to line them up like this. You don't need to do that anymore. All you're really doing with the motion warping stuff now is being able to just assign, okay, this movement to here, this movement to here, and then go ahead, do the land, cool, all right. And then at this point, we want to end. And we don't want to do it any sooner or any later. So that's kind of what some of this stuff is going to allow, is for transitioning in between animations, from multiple different packs, multiple different start and end types very smoothly. One thing that's also pretty cool too is that you can use the Mixamo characters. So the Mixamo animations, as some of you might know, do not have root motion at all. You can only use in-place versions of animations, and if you do want to use them, you need to take out the pelvis movement or add a root bone, redo all that stuff, and then it becomes even more tricky. But one thing that I did find that was I thought interesting is if I removed the forward and up and down pelvis movement from the character animation completely, and then used the motion warping component to be able to actually have the vault or whatever the action type was, it actually still worked. It was awesome. It completely removed Some of the limitations that we have with root motion and non-root motion, if the character is just at the very minimum root locked, and we use the motion warping to be able to actually move from point A to B, even animations that don't have motion can be used so long as the root lock is enabled, or root motion is enabled on the animation, but it doesn't have any. So there's some really, really cool stuff that you can do with stuff like that. Oops, sorry, let's see here. Yeah, so repelling is something that I'm going to be hoping to try and add into this version of the system. I've created probably, I would say, about 4 different type of grappling and repelling systems over the years. And the one thing that's a struggle for me right now, this is meant to be 100% replicated, multiplayer friendly. Every single aspect of the system, every single element of it will operate the exact same with single player as well as multiplayer. When I do anything cable related, which is going to be grappling hooks, the fishing thing that you were talking about, all of that is through physics sims. Now, I haven't quite been able to get a fully complete matching physics simulation while also maintaining optimization and performance. I know there's the async tick physics node or something like that that allows you to be able to replicate physics distributions. But when you really look at the load that creates, doing something all the time like a grappling hook that might always be being thrown or might be being in the game for a long period of time, 3 or 4 of them and you're done. And that becomes hugely problematic. So the grappling stuff might not be in the current version. I'm going to be doing everything I can to try and do it, but it is a problem with that just to try and get everything together. So that's part of the new action selection types. So we have the vault, mantle, drop. We also have free actions, where if there's no drop, you can see like there was no floor drop off found in front of the character, no side walls, no nothing. So right now I just have one single animation in there. That's purely because I actually had bought a pack with a bunch of really cool flippy tricks and follow-up stuff. There was a bit of a problem with the root motion on it, and it wasn't the developer's fault. It was an issue with Fab, I guess. They gave me an older version of it. So I need to reach out to them to be able to get the modern version of the animations. But unfortunately, because of that, I do not have any other free action type stuff to be able to showcase. But it works exactly the same way. So if I go back to the blueprint here, here we go. So we can see that the suggested based action type, free action, and it's going to select the row use index 3. So if I look at the ground action montage selection here, 3 is going to be this one here. So we can see ground action values, index, and then the montage here. And it operates the same way as the vaults and the mantles. The only difference is that rather than using any of these height, length, and distance values, which these are in there because unfortunately, I can't have a structure just remove information at times. I'm working on trying to code out something that's going to actually work in here. But for right now, it's just a standard listing. But instead of using these, you would use the modifiers options. So you can use things like, for example, the tic-tac free action, where you can do a sidewall jump off and just kind of do like a jump into the air. You would use sidewalls as a modifier. So like if I open up the modifiers here, primaries, so we can do like 1 if we're sprinting, 1 if we're not. Then we got the sidewall lefts and rights, enclosures, and then we also have the custom action mod selection that you can use as well. Now I am thinking about possibly adding in more values for the free action stuff. This I will say I feel like is defined, but knowing me, I'm gonna probably end up messing with it. It's kind of my thing. So and I appreciate that because, there was something that I was really concerned about, adding all these, index this, value that. I was feeling like I might be confused because, when you're sitting here working on it for, 10 plus hours a day, 5 to 7 days a week, what you feel like is easy is not going to relate and translate the same always. So I do really appreciate that notation, that it does look user-friendly in the simplicity of setup as well. So I really do appreciate that note. But yeah, no, because like the point is, again, because we'll be able to do ground actions, and again, using the action mods, you could do a flippy trick. Whoops. Oh, that's right. I added in a modifier because I was showing modifiers. Delete that out. Well, I guess that at least shows that, you change a value, things don't get selected because it's looking for something that don't exist. But yeah, you can see here that he does that little action there. And the thing that's I thought was really cool is that when you do anything in these animations, if you set an action mod, for example, like create a notify, for example, like you can create a custom notify. And if you guys don't know how to do that, it's stupid simple. Right click in your animation, add notify, new notify. You can be like set custom action mod 2, right? So let's say at this point of the animation, you want to set custom action mod 2 to true. Now, bear in mind, this is going to be more for like transitional use, right? So if you set this, it is going to be reset at one point or another. It's not going to remain all the way through. So just bear in mind that this is only going to be remaining during the initial animation or in the follow-up animation. But after whatever sequence has completed, the action mods are going to be reset. Or I'm sorry, these saved values are going to be reset. So, but what we can do though is with that new notify, if we go to like the animation blueprint here, event graph, don't worry about some of the stuff you just saw in the animation blueprint stuff. That's just simple blending stuff for my additive landing, which will be a video in of itself for those of you who are interested in learning about additive montage landing animations. It's pretty cool stuff. Just something that I'm going to add in as part of the overall tutorial series. But anyways, so if we look up the anim notify set custom action mod 2, right? So now from here, we have a notify that we just created. We just added it into the animation, right? And then from here, we can go BP third person character and then just get the Dynamic Parkour Trace System. Whoops. Get the get node. This is where you guys can see exactly how much my Unreal loves to mess with me. Trying not to swear on stream here. Parkour. There we go. So if we get this, then we can just get the custom action mods and action mod. There we go. I apologize, guys. I am apparently unable to type today. It's the end of the week, and I am just done. But anyways, so we can see now we got set a custom action mod 2. We can set boom index 2, and then just set it to true. So this is the type of thing you could do. You could set up your own notifies, your own things, and just go ahead and just kind of, take things together. Right. Sorry, I'm just catching up on chat here. Yeah, so the additive montage stuff is actually really cool, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to make sure to add it as a video. And this is only going to be when the system releases, as I'm going to be pouring all of my time into this like I currently am. But yeah, no, there will be a video that's going to come out that's going to show how to be able to do additive stuff. And if you guys do have any questions about it, feel free to reach out into the Discord. I can always, at the very minimum, maybe point you to a direction of a couple of videos that might be able to get you started. There's always some good information on YouTube. Not all of it comes from me. So, but anyways, so that's essentially how you would be able to do that, though. So you can set your own custom transition values, your own setups, your own whatever you want. It's kind of completely up to you now on how things are going to get translated, created, and adjusted. Now, before we start getting to the end of things here, there is one additional new item that has been added into the system, and that's called a dynamic landing position. Because one of the things that was irritating to me is if you vaulted on top of something and vaulted over it, right, the floor position for where you're going to land is not going to be the same as where you started. what this essentially means is that the amount of like you're falling is, you should be going a little bit more forward than if you just kind of vaulted over it and, you know, maybe it was only like 50 units high. But if it's 300 units high, you might want to go up a little bit higher or go a little bit farther forward, just to mimic that kind of gravity in a way. So I do believe I've turned them off. I'm just doing this because I'm trying to keep the code off screen as much as I can. But we're going to go ahead and just set these to 4 durations. That way I can show you guys how this works. So if I go and hit play, if I do this, you're going to see a series. Oh, wait, is it on that animation? Might have put it on a different animation. I'm just going to go ahead and scale these out here a little bit. Because I think what I did was I put it on the sliding. So I'm just going to need to play from here. All right. So if I do this, you're going to see how there's a few box traces that are happening. Now, what this is doing is that it's finding the best possible spot based off of the height. So if I go into the animation for that really quickly, animations, actions, vault, montages, and slide vault. Okay. So here you can see the find dynamic landing position notified. Now, there's a few different values here that you can mess around with that really kind of becomes really fun. And that's the default height, which is just basically how far the animation falls on a normal scale. I found that around 50 to 90 was a standard value for vaulting actions, but it's you know, it's up to you. And the forward adjustment is going to be how far forward each iteration is going to go. So just to show you again, if we go back to that section here, whoops. Boom, boom. You can see that he went, you know, what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times, 5 or 6 times. But if I were to take this, we'll just take a copy of it real quick, and then we'll play from here, right? So if I do this version of it, you can see that it only went 3 times. And that's not necessarily because there's a blocking object here, but that's because of the fact that it's just significantly lower to the ground. So therefore, it's doing less traces because it doesn't need to go as far forward. So that's what the new dynamic landing is going to do, is that it's those box traces are going 20, 20, 20. And then the default height is going to be sort of the adjustment where it's going to go, okay, well, our default height is 50. We've got X height right now. So we're going to do and run this to be able to make sure that that adjustment is made, to be able to allow for some really interesting dynamic landing areas, regardless of where the starting height was. It's all going to be about kind of where that ending height is. And then combining that with the retime here, where we can also, you know, select the, instead of just doing standard height and lengths, we can select height to land area. We can now then create animations that will basically kind of stall out their landing position until they actually hit the ground. Now, there is going to be a transitional for falling and things like that, but that's going to be something that's also worked into the climbing, so it's kind of created, kind of not. It's mostly there. But again, you know, the thing that really matters is just being able to define selection, and that's essentially what we've created here, is the ability to move around the map, get some really interesting type of movements regardless of what the action's height might be or the animation's default height might be. You know, we got that nice little kind of just step over the bench there. We can use tic-tac actions to be able to go up and over and then get to the edge here and drop down. You know, there's so much more that we can do now that allows for some really unique opportunities to occur within parkour and video games in general. You know, because one of the things that I am trying to do is, as I'm trying to break the ideology that you need map tags and collision checks and all this crap that, you know, almost every single parkour system I think I've ever seen or that's ever been created has had. I want to create something that's truly dynamic and is more of like, it's like an AI parkour tool. It's able to read, trace, calculate, and output, select and then refine, define, and then re-output. It's one of those things that it's a multi-stage process. It's getting its own information, correlating it, calculating it, comparing it, selecting. And with all of this, just to also show, I think it's Control-Shift-H. Yeah. So you can see here, once everything loaded, we're at a full 120 frames per second, which, by the way, just in case you guys are curious, this is a fully open world map. I have Nanite fully activated. I'm sorry, not Nanite, Lumen. I've got, reflection captures set to Lumen. I've got I think it's set to Epic right now on the quality. So like everything is turned up, okay? And we're still rocking 120 frames the entire time, even with a bunch of traces still showing up. So, even regardless of the fact of, now that we're getting a few different sphere traces up, we're starting to get a little bit of a dip, but it's nothing major. And it's just because of how many traces are rendering right now, is essentially all that's kind of going on. Regardless of anything that's else is happening, we're still remaining right around 120 frames per second in an open world with Lumen reflections, and I'm also again doing Epic quality. And I'm using these. I think some of these are 4K assets. At the very minimum, these ones are 2K assets because I bought these specifically to try and, I've downscaled the walls. But yeah, so we're still getting really well performance, really great optimization. Even with all of that's going on, it's still one of those things that's just an absolute smooth fest right now. So let's see, just see a couple more things going on in chat, just trying to catch up real quick. Yeah, and that's exactly it. Wall run, vaulting. One of the things, I'm not, just to clarify, I'm not knocking Epic. They do some great stuff. But the collision spline actor thing that you have to add for their vaulting system is I can't even imagine being a map developer with that. That sounds like days and days and days of work just to get a room done. Not something I'd ever want to do myself. So that's one thing that that's one of the reasons why I created this system to begin with, was to try and break away from that. Version 1 was just vaulting and mantling, very basic. Version 2 added in climbing and transitional actions and ledge animation actions and stuff like that. And version 3 is going to bring some more action adventure type stuff. It's going to bring some additional movement types, some smoothing, blending, all that kind of stuff. Version 4, just to give you a little bit of sneak peek as to what I have up in here for version 4, is going to be actually all the procedural animation and IK based stuff. So none of that is going to be here. This is going to be kind of just, the version 3 is going to be finishing out all of the actions that I want to have into the system. That doesn't mean that the first release of version 3 is going to be it. I might add in grappling at a later time when I figure out the physics, if I can't get it added in by the time version 3 launches. There might be some additional things that I haven't added into version 3 by the time it releases that I might add in later on. This is, by the time version 3 is completed, it's going to have every single action that I want to have in this system, which I'll tell you right now is not a small list. So there's going to be a ton of stuff that you're going to be able to do. And then after this is going to be procedural animation time. It's going to be very, very interesting to dive into that. We'll have, leg placements, hand plants, all that kind of stuff, adding some more procedural control. But I want to get the action selection, definition, and calculations all done to the perfect level, and then, move on to the next stuff there. All right. I think that about closes it out for right now. The other thing, I've shown you guys the dynamic jumping and stuff, and nothing's really changed there. So I think that's going to be probably about it for right now, guys. We got all the new values, the new control, the new transitions and blending and stuff. Now, it's just to clarify, this is the end of the showcase start of things. So the IK stuff is going to be when you're on a ledge, like a 4-point ledge point climb, your feet are planted up against the wall, your hands are on the thing. There's going to be rotations, so that way, like, if the object is rotated like this, your hands will rotate with the normal of the object. Your feet will also go forward or backwards to be able to place on the wall, using values that you can set with a max or minimum value. For vaulting specifically as well, should probably start a little closer to an actor. So it's things like this, where he kind of goes up and his hand goes in a little bit. And yes, this can be fixed with offsets and things like this, but in order to make it so his hand stays on it all the time, never goes below it, and the arm might move as the animation changes certain locations, that's going to be through IK. Most likely through a notify. I haven't quite defined all that out yet. So yeah, the selection between the two is going to be in the update, but the IK system that is going to control how far the legs get pushed back or forward, or the rotation of the hands and things like that, will not be. But for the climbing, yes, there's going to be everything that is currently available, with their ledge climbing, free climbing, all that type of stuff, which that stuff, I haven't quite defined how I'm going to be able to separate the free climbing. That one might be tag based. There's are going to be some things that are tag based just because it's, to help definition that this isn't a ledge, this is a pipe. Character doesn't have eyes. You got to give it some sense of coordination. But limiting that is the goal. But anyways, so yeah, so there's going to be ability to differentiate between like the full hang where your legs are just straight down and you're kind of shimmying along, as well as the full plant where your feet are on the wall, and like how it currently is, how I demonstrate in most of the example videos when I'm doing a ledge shimmy. That type of action will the difference between the two will be allowed as a definition. Not sure if it's going to be a Boolean value or an enum or something. It's going to be simple. It's going to be something simple, something you can just hook up to a simple blend value in your animation blueprint, and create climb states. So that's all. Yeah, so the foot slide is something I want to add an IK system, but I've also been thinking about trying to add a root motion control function as well, because that's essentially where the foot sliding comes in, is that if you have an IK foot system and you have a root motion blending functionality, that goes away completely. So I do have to explore a little bit whether or not that's going to be fully an IK function, or if it's going to be a root blend type of thing in combination with. But it is something that is going to be probably more version 4 than version 3, because again, the procedural anim stuff I'm going to be working on for the next update once all the selections and stuff get put in. But yeah, no, it's definitely something that irritates me when I see the foot slide and things like that. And I will say too, like the character movement settings here are pretty much the default. I think the only thing that I've adjusted is the rotation rate. So instead of the default of 500, I put it to, I think, 300. But that's the only thing that I've changed. Everything else is the standard third-person character movement setting stuff. So there's a lot of probably braking, deceleration stuff, acceleration, falling frictions, things like that could probably be defined a little bit more to help with some of that as well. But I'm not really too sure about the directionality with that. But yeah, no, it is, I appreciate that. Yeah, no, the hand placement is definitely good right now, but I'm waiting. Once I get that IK plant system in place too, it's going to make everything different, because the arm will move in or out as the animation is lining up. So it'll give it kind of like that sense of actual dynamic planting as well, giving it a little bit more life as you're going through. Kind of bringing some of that life from the animation and putting it into the actual gameplay. Was there anybody else have any other questions or anything that they want to ask about regarding the system? Just getting to the end. I don't think I have anything else that I can quite think about at the moment. Yeah, man. This one, I have to say, I'm really happy about this one. I love the engagement, guys. It's been awesome. This is exactly what I was hoping for. You guys coming in, seeing what's going on, asking questions. This is perfect. So you know what? I like the beard. Okay, Brett. I like my scruff, man. God, always giving me a hard time, my dude. But anyways, man. All right, so not seeing any more questions here. So we're going to go ahead and close it out, guys. But if you do have any more, anything else that you can think of, anything you want to reach out to me about, feel free. Discord is, I'm always monitoring, as you guys know. And for those of you who might be interested, I will also note that I am currently looking for programming work. Believe it or not, I actually find time to do things in between developing the parkour system. How? I don't really know. But if you guys know anybody who is looking for a developer, go ahead and point them my way or point me in their way. Either way, always looking for more ways to be able to get involved in things. But it's been fun, guys. It's been awesome. I just want to thank you guys again for the interaction, the questions. It's been absolutely blast. This is again exactly what I was hoping for with this. So thank you. You guys are awesome. But I will see you guys in the next one. There's going to be more updates and stuff coming out about way things are going to flow with the system on the Discord, so keep an eye out for that. But until next time, guys, stay tuned, and as always, stay animated.